and looking at a lot of issues as far as policy, economy, and social issues are concerned. My name is Dibala Nair. I'm joined this morning by Dr. Isaac Green Kalua, who is the party leader of the Green Thinking Action Party. Also, I'm joined by Professor Gitile Naitole, who is a leadership and management professor at the Multimedia University. We'll be joined much later by Daisy Mdani, who's the executive director of Contrast, and also be joined by Dr. Tim Mwangi, who is the vice chancellor of International Leadership University. But for now, let's just hear from them, Dr. Kalua and also Dr. Professor Gitile Naitole. Good to see you, Dr. Kalua. It's been a while.
It's been a while, and
yes.
Thank you for having me.
You're
How
welcome
have you
back.
been?
I've been well myself.
Good.
Yes.
And your family is good?
Yes, everyone is okay.
Sante sana. Nice to see my prof here as well.
Karibu sana.
Yes,
Prof,
thank you.
Good morning, good to see you.
Good morning, good to see you too.
Fantastic. We've got a lot to cover, but let's just begin by what is fresh off the press this morning. This is what is on the front page of the Standard today. Silent wars in the Ruto government is what is hogging the front page of the Standard this morning. It says that cracks within this government resignation of correctional services, or this week's resignation of correctional services PS Esther Ngero, days after she was moved from the Prime Cabinet Secretary's office, has exposed similar intentions within the Kenya Kwanza administration, coming only a week after the president was forced to crack the whip and reshuffle his PSs. This story is tucked away on page 4 of the Standard, and you can see also the picture there of Dr. Josephine Mburu, who was sacked, and Esther Ngero, who quit government. And so there's a silent wars apparently in the Ruto government. Something is simmering there. On top here, Andy Ruto, the registrar in Raila's crosshairs. Andy Ruto, the registrar in Raila's crosshairs. In Mombasa County, there's a row seemingly as well over charity. Mombasa County row over charity. That story is tucked away on page 8 of the Standard. Also remember, every Friday you have Paul's Magazine coming your way, where you get entertained with all the stories making headlines in the entertainment industry. Who will succeed Kipchoge? That is their batting question. And this story continues on page 34 of the Standard this morning. Simply the best. Tina Turner exits the stage. She dies at 83. And you can read all about her and the messages of condolences and tributes being sent to her family. That story on page 3 of the Star this morning. Tea battles, leaders eat humble pie. That is on page 11. This is how the Standard looks this morning. Let's see what the Daily Nation is holding for us. Hidden tax pain in Ruto. Hidden tax pain in Ruto's budget. Economy, public participation closes today, but fate of proposals in the hands of MP. Which way will it go? Everyone is eagerly awaiting to see the decision that will be made on the floor of the House. And it has been broken down for you, but now you should be intimately familiar by some of the items in this particular finance bill. 1,344 shillings, that is Mama Mboga and Boda businesses earning 100, that is 1,344 daily, or 500,000 annually, to now pay 3% turnover tax. VAT on petrol and fuel to double from 8 to 16%. Plan to have tax agents in markets, street stalls to monitor compliance. Also, we have 16% on insurance compensation. Housing levy charged at 3% of employees' salary, with a similar contribution by employer capped at 5,000 shillings. 5% excess tax on fake beards, human hair, wigs, eyelashes, and eyebrows. I'm looking around to see who has fake beards with my panelist here, right? That maybe we need to tax, so I'll be looking along. Right, there are 5% excess tax on fake beard, human hair, wigs, eyelashes, and eyebrows. Also, we have 35% pay as you earn. That is tax for those earning above 500,000. Risk of 150 billion shillings capital flight in steel manufacturing sector, with proposed levy on export promotion and investment. And Besides the controversial 3% housing levy, small businesses owners, workers, motorists, employers, manufacturers, transporters face steep tax increases in the coming month if President William Ruto's administration gets support from Parliament to squeeze an extra 200 billion shillings from Kenya's pockets. And this story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Hidden tax pin in Ruto's budget. On the side with there, now there's a student who lost 102 million shillings, which is apparently a love gift in quotes to the state government allowed to keep the money held in 2 bank accounts after court established that cash gift came from proceeds of money laundering. Student loses 102 million shillings love gift to the state. Right.
Do they get someone to give them that?
102 million shillings. Well, still a student, you've not even started working. Some people are still, they're very lucky. Professor, I don't know what to think.
How do they get someone to give them that kind of money?
It is called love. Love will do anything.
It's blind.
It is blind. Why are you laughing?
Because that's clearly proceeds from crime.
But it's not been
Not
established.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Someone who actually give you 200 million.
Well, could be very many situations behind it, including.
Yeah, but also we know she sang, "What's love
yeah,
got
so-
to do?
But
Got to do with it?
the student already lost the money.
Where's love got to do?" Tina Turner passed away. Yeah, so
So sad.
yeah,
But did she do her best?
she did her
Oh,
best. Yeah, Tina Turner.
Tina Turner, yes.
Yes, and she was known to also have some stocky legs.
Yes.
People were saying, "Oh my goodness!" Right, growling songstress there, whose explosive stage presence electrified fans the world over, left an indelible mark on 20th century rock with 5 decades of hits. That story continues on page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. I wonder if, Professor, you used to listen to Tina Turner. I remember those days when you used to go to...
I never listened to any music.
You never listened to any music?
No, I only listen to traditional music or classic.
That's still music.
But at least I've heard of Tina Turner.
You
There
don't know
was
any
a
of our
joke
songs.
at one time after high school. I was employed by American Life Insurance, and then somebody asked me, "We're talking about the Michael Jackson." I thought he was a politician. I had no idea that he
But
was.
Prof, how can you be... You were actually teaching in the States, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but
And you didn't even know of Michael Jackson, of
no,
Tina
at that
Turner?
time I had known about them.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
talking about it from my school when I was,
Or
before
from
I
high
went
school?
there.
Okay. But I know Dr. Kalua, Dr. Green was actually, the man then, in his heyday. So
I did.
These were the hits
moves,
that you were
man.
playing. You did the moves.
I did the moves. Oh yeah.
This is the Daily Nation. This is how it looks. Tributes continues to be poured in for Tina Turner. And pension row. Where is our money? Retired teachers cry foul over 43 billion shillings dues. This is what it says here. Retirees deny receiving any cash days after Treasury CS Njuguna Ndungu told senators the government had disbursed 16 billion shillings to pay them. That is a story that you want to follow on the back page of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's move on and see what the Star is holding for us. The trouble in counties, governor's confession. The trouble in counties. This is the governor's confessions. County chiefs list litany of problems that have hit devolved units, say they are on life support. That is what we have here. County chiefs list litany of problems that have hit devolved units, says they are on life support. Well, if this coming from governors, it seems things are in the thick right now. That is the story that you want to follow inside the Star on page 4 and 5 of this publication. Police dump minor Njenga minor Njenga in Nairobi after roaming with him for hours. And we can see Mungiki Kambuk. That is a question that is being asked here. Supporters of minor Njenga. You can see them here engaging police officers on Kiambu Road following his alleged arrest on Thursday. And that story continues on page 9 of the Star. Alarm as Hasoko boys closed indefinitely after student's death. Hasoko High School in Bungoma County has been closed indefinitely following the death of a student. Speaking to the press in his office on Thursday, Health CEC Dr. Andrew Wamalo said the problem started on May the 17th after 24 students developed severe headaches and general body weakness. Also, Ruto team to Azimio, withdrawal from talks premature, unnecessary. President William Ruto's troops in the bipartisan team on Thursday termed Azimio move to walk out of the talks premature and unnecessary. The team led by the Tharaka MP, George Murugara, said their counterparts did not exhaust all avenues of conflict resolution as provided for in the committee's framework agreement. Remember, you have Siasa Pull-Out magazine that ushers your weekend. Can Uhuru regain political control of Mount Kenya block? Maybe Professor will tell us that much later in the course of the program. Fight over Jubilee. It has been quite a severe one. And you have page 2 and 3 covering this on Siasa in your Pull-Out magazine in the Star. People Daily, PAX, pay PAX, its lion's share of tax money. Pay PAX, its lion's share of tax money. Where your cash goes, more than 316 billion shillings was used on personal emoluments for national and county governments workers in 10 months between June 2022 and March this year. Salaries and Remuneration Commission has warned that the trend leaves too little for development. Pay PAX its lion's share of tax money. That story continues on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. Heartbreakers final curtain falls on Tana. That is on page 3. And we can see also celebrating Africa Day as AU clocks 60. This is a picture there. Ethiopia Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Also we have Comoros President and the Chairperson of the African Union Azali Soumani and African Union Commission Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat joining guests to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Organization of African Unity, now African Union, at the African Union Commission headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia yesterday. The feat is also known as Africa Day. This is how it looks this morning. On top, school games put on hold as fans delayed. And tough relegations battle in last La Liga weekend. That is the People Daily for you this morning. Let's move on to see what we have on the front page of Taifa Leo. Ushuru, sumu iko hapa. This is what Taifa Leo is saying. Mama mboga, bodaboda, kufinywa zaidi na ushuru mpya unaopigiwa debe na serikali ya Kenya Kwanza. You can follow the story on page 3 of Taifa Leo. 3% or asilimia 3 serikali kunyofoa asilimia 3 ya mishahara ya wafanyikazi kufadhili nyumba. I will not read all the details there. You can grab a copy of Taifa Leo for the rest of the details. And Business Daily. There is another shoe that is waiting to drop, and this is all in the insurance sector, where there is storm over state planning to tax insurance payouts. This is another tax again. They say AKI argues insurance is VAT exempt, so not subject to tax. Proposal to hit insurance whose penetration is below 3%. Just to give you a snippet of this, what it says here by Patrick Alushula. Insurance customers will start parting with 16% tax on the money paid to them by insurers as compensation for their losses if the proposal, whose interpretation has split tax experts and insurance firms, is adopted. The Finance Bill 2023 is proposing to introduce a new subsection to Section 17 of the Value Added Tax Act to allow for the owner of a taxable supplies who is compensated for the loss of the goods to pay 16% VAT, where a bona fide owner of taxable supplies who has deducted inputs tax under subsection 1 is compensated for loss of the taxable supplies. The compensation shall be treated as taxable supply, reads the Finance Bill. Remember, the submissions for your proposals was today is the deadline. So if you've not had any spotting chance to actually weigh in on this finance bill. Today marks the day that is the end of it. 80 billion shillings Lake Turkana wind power loses land to community. And looking on the ticker there, global economists cut Kenya's growth outlook. Global economists have marginally downgraded Kenya's growth outlook for 2023, citing below average rainfall, a weakening shilling amid lingering threats of return of anti-government protest. Also, Indian oil firms confirm talks to buy Kenya tallow oil stake, and Safaricom's market dominance eases amid share price out. That is how the Business Daily looks for you this morning. Make sure you grab a copy of the Business Daily. In Uganda, now MPs are tightening rules for hiring casual workers. That is what is on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Kigali Murongo hydropower dam also to boost development. Is all about energy, and you can see the president there holding court with the President Suluhu of Tanzania. You can read the rest of the details inside the Daily Monitor. This is how it looks this morning. Also, the scoop comes in handy for you every Friday. End of the road for Sauti Sol. They're focusing Sauti Sol here in the country. In Rwanda, how genocide fugitive Kayishema eluded capture. He's been arrested in South Africa. To evade arrest, Kayishema relied on a network of supporters, including family members and FDLR. You can follow the story on page 3 of the New Times. Halfway homes will lessen recidivism rates. This is what Minister is saying, Alfred Gasana. And you can see him here laying a foundation stone during the groundbreaking ceremony of the construction works on halfway houses in Ruamanga, or Ruamagana, I should say, district on Thursday, May the 25th. The new facility expected to be completed by April 2024 will cost more than 1 billion Rwandan francs and host 2,000 male and 500 female inmates, respectively. You can follow the story inside the New Times as well. Rwanda still awaits justice 29 years after genocide. An opinion there on page 6 of the New Times. The Citizen in Tanzania, land digitalization a priority as government eyes 8 trillion shillings investments. Also, what $100 million Tanzania-Uganda power project means. And you saw there President Museveni and Suluhu deliberating on that particular eye-popping figure for the power sector. This week we've been having the East Africa holding this particular splash for us. Kenya politics hurts common market dream. And it says the latest spat with Uganda over milk exports lifts the veil on internal political intrigues that now threaten cross-border trade. The latest spat with Uganda over milk exports lifts the veil on internal political intrigues that now threaten cross-border trade. This is on page 4 and 5 of the East African. New commander reports for duty. Major General Alfaxad Kiyugu takes over from Major General Jeff Nyaga, who ran afoul of Kinshasa. You can follow the story inside the East African this week. Kenya and Uganda may jointly fund SGR projects. The two states are seeking an alternative financial to connect Naivasha and Kampala with Beijing, not among the options. That is the story that you want to follow inside the East African this morning. Let's move on and see what we have on the front page of a China Daily. Xi, he says, BRI helps boost Eurasian collaboration. Countries encouraged to work together with unity, dedication to open up new prospects. That is what we have to follow inside the China Daily. As the Belt and Road Initiative, it says here, drives an economically vibrant Eurasian region while delivering increasing benefits to the world. President Xi Jinping has urged stronger synergy between the initiative and Eurasian Economic Union to boost Asia-Europe cooperation. This is how the China Daily looks. Also on top here, Belt and Road benefits. Kenya reaping real dividends from China proposed initiative. Kenya reaping real dividends from China proposed initiative. That is tucked away on page 8 and 9. That is, of course, Belt and Road Initiative, 10 years on. How has been the track since the beginning and the launching of the Belt and Road Initiatives, right? You could follow the story on page 8 and 9 where Kenya has been ripping big on this as well. Now, it seems that COVID is not out with us yet, right now. If you look at the Washington Post, China braces for a new wave of COVID from XBB variants. Chinese authorities are rushing to push out vaccines to fight an ongoing new wave of the coronavirus expected to peak in June and infect as many as 65 million people a week as the new XBB variant of the virus evolves to overcome the immunity built up after China's abrupt exit from its zero COVID policy last year. That is a story that you want to follow right now. And the World Health Organization has actually declared that we are corona-free. Professor?
Yes.
So we have a new variant, XBB.
Yes, but I think right now people have developed sufficient immunity.
So there is a herd immunity right now?
Yes, herd immunity.
But a herd immunity to the new variant?
This is not a new virus, it's a variant. So the variant, the body will recognize.
The body will
recognize it as the original one and deal with
attack it.
Yeah.
All right. That is it. The Washington Post this morning. China braces for a new wave of COVID from XBB. Just what I had for you there. Let's look at the editorial cartoons. This is where we want to get our panelists to weigh in as well. This is the KK housing scheme, according to Gado. And you can see how it is developing right now. Njiko has many questions regarding it. So this is what Gado has drawn for us this morning. Also, we have Stano. How much is a homeless and jobless street family member supposed to contribute to own a house? The executive there, of course, constructing the house coming soon, affordable and social affordable housing project. That is what we have on the People Daily, the editorial pages as well. I shall be showing you much more of this, but let's just set the tone right now where the suspended bipartisan talks between the Kenya Kwanza team and Azimio La Umoja coalition might be headed for collapse. This after the Azimio coalition turned down an invite from a meeting called by the Kenya Kwanza. That is leader George Muragara. Let's just listen into this particular story that sets the tone for our show this morning.
48 hours since the suspension of the bipartisan talks by the Azimio coalition team, citing lack of seriousness on the part of their Kenya Kwanza colleagues, the group is still adamant and not ready to play ball.
How many are we?
The Kenya Kwanza team, led by the co-chair George Murugara, today came out and invited Otiende Amolo team for Monday talks, saying contrary to belief, their side is fully committed to resolve the dispute.
As the Kenya Kwanza side of the coalition, that we are always ready for these talks. The talks can resume as early as tomorrow, next week, or whenever we are informed by the other side that they are ready to resume.
One of the demands by Azimio coalition was seeking to stop Kenya Kwanza from interfering with any political party affiliated to Azimio coalition. The case in point being Jubilee Party, which is currently staring at a split due to infighting between two factions. The Kenya Kwanza administration is being accused of funding trouble by supporting the Kanini Kega team.
As to members going to State House or going anywhere else, it's their freedom. They are free to associate in whichever manner they feel is appropriate. And for Kenya Kwanza, for Azimio, we will only tell them if there are their own internal disputes, they settle those disputes themselves internally in accordance with their instruments and in accordance with the law. Really, we cannot be accused, although we cannot stop them from accusing. But we do not admit any of that.
Moments after the press, the Azimio co-chair Otiende Amolo released a statement to the media stating that as Azimio, they will not be accepting any invitation to any meeting if the Kenya Kwanza team is not prepared to concede to their request. Another request by Azimio was the cost of living and opening of the IEBC servers.
We would persuade our principals to cease any form of mandamano as long as the talks were on, and we made that offer. We also indicated that we would talk to our principals and we would persuade them and ourselves to cease any talk that would undermine these bipartisan talks. We were willing to concede to those two. They were not willing to concede to any in terms of our request.
It is not even in good faith to start with one demand after another demand and with ultimatums in between that if you don't do this, we will halt the talks, we will suspend the talks, we will actually cancel the talks.
In our opinion, refusal to concede to any of these interim measures, which look logical to us, means then that we have irreconcilable difference on a fundamental issue.
And with the standoff persisting, the Azimio Brigade will on Friday retreat to Yatta Farm on the invitation of Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka, where they expected to give their supporters on the next course of action after the suspension of the talks. The Azimio team is also expected to hold a parliamentary group meeting on Tuesday next week. One of the main threats by Azimio is to go back to the streets for weekly demos. Chris Dairo, KTN News, Nairobi.
Right. So we put that also on the table this morning, and I want just to begin by asking Professor Itile Naitole, because we thought the resumption of this particular talks, it would have been now the main issue being put on the table is the IBC, because we still have June, I think it's July.
Yes.
We know that in Mandera, there's one of a member of parliament that passed on. Yeah. Right now, there's of course a vacant seat.
And several MCAs.
And we do not, and several other MCAs as well. And now we are strapped for time.
Yes.
To really have these squabbles going on, and IBC is not intact right now.
I think if I can try to interpret what I'm seeing, it looks like Kenya Kwanza actually is not interested in these negotiations, because how do you see what you do when you are going to a serious thing as this? Because this is serious, you get very serious people. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to look at the quality of KK negotiators against Azimio. Azimio is who in Kenya. Okay, it's the heavyweights. They actually nominated heavyweight into that panel. But these fellows, they are very interesting people. I mean, I have nothing against those fellows. I don't even know them. But I look at the quality in terms of seriousness with which you need to address this issue. And I think KK may not be serious with this negotiation. What I'm suspecting is they may actually want to dispense with the NBC and then kill the negotiations entirely. And maybe the Azimio is sensing that. And insisting that they deal with the audit of the 2022 election before they go to NBC. That's what I'm suspecting. When I look at when I read the stuff in the newspapers, and then when I look at the tussle going on. Because right now the problem is preliminaries. And the preliminaries is you need to clear the bushes before you can reach to the main agenda.
Yes.
And they are disagreeing here on the bushes because I think KK needed to take these fellows and be serious. They don't respect them. And if you don't respect your partners, it's very hard to approach negotiations. First, you need to start with the complete respect for the parties involved in the negotiation. And it appears me, Kenya Kwanza doesn't respect these people. Mm-hmm. And that should become a problem for the negotiators.
So if we bypass the date that has been given there, for that the speaker had given actually in Parliament, for this seat to be filled or the elections to be held in Mandera, what does it really portend constitutionally?
I think that office being vacant itself is already a problem for that long. So I don't know what happened, because those people are now being denied representation. The people's
of Basani there.
Yes, and also the other MCAs. I think there was an MC who was mandated in Western Kenya, and so on. Those people now basically are being denied representation by not having a functional electoral body. So for me, I thought that should be an urgent matter for them to deal with. Yeah, re-establishing that. But also, from the SMEO perspective, if you don't audit the process and what happened with the 2022 election, and then you can as well not have an electoral body at all. So, and this is what the KK need to read in order for them to figure out how to accommodate the other party. Because the truth is, they will have to negotiate. They will have to have an agreement on these issues.
Thank you. Right, let's hear from Dr. Kalua. With this development, it seems now we'll be going back to the streets since it's hitting a brick wall.
I'm not sure that we may end up back to the streets. I imagine that politics is like a game of chess. Everyone is pulling towards a direction that they have an interest in. I also may not necessarily look at the representation to be an issue, because at the end of the day, it is the institution that is represented, not necessarily the individuals who are representing the institutions. Sadly, we are already in 2027 politics, even as we do all these things. So we are looking at this, Kenyans are looking and expecting that there is an issue that is a preliminary that is actually being dealt with, but maybe the interests are bigger than just what is on the table being represented. But I believe that being a Kenyan today, if God has given you the life to be there today, you all want to solve this kind of an impasse. And I am very hopeful that something is definitely going to happen. It is in the interest of every leader to do that. I may not have the internal issues that are happening right now, but one thing I'm convinced is that it is not easy to get back to the streets, not after what we know the repercussions are, not knowing the fact that our leaders are very careful to hold the country together. So I am very hopeful. I have a lot of hope that a lot of good is going to happen. But sadly, as I said, politics is a game. And sadly, 2027 is already in play. And the further the delay, the better for the Kenya Kwanza to sort out some of the issues in a way that is going to work for them within the manifesto, as opposed to the others who may want to have something different. But I am one of those people who are praying that Kenya gets these things sorted out in the best way possible. But it's a game.
It's a game.
Yeah.
It's a game of chess. Daisy Mdani, good to see you on this other side of the tracks. It's been a long while.
It has been a long while. Good morning.
Good morning to you. And of course, I normally say that you cannot see the picture if you're in the frame. So you have been out of the picture so far, and you've been now looking at the frame right now, and I think maybe you've observed one or two things that maybe you want to comment on right now, especially from the crossover from 2022 to 2023 with the new administration.
I just think that what we are witnessing is the usual selfishness that politicians embody, where they're looking more at what is in it for them as opposed to what the country needs at this point in time. Our country is at a very delicate point on all fronts, economically, socially, and now politically. They are also driving us to the edge. And I think that there have been significant calls from various quarters for us to have a national conversation, for this conversation to be taken away from just the politicians, and for us to have a national conversation that addresses all the issues, that Kenya needs to address. And I think it's about time that we strengthen that call. Because if the politicians continue with this push and pull, and I want to agree with Dr. Kalua that this is really positioning for, it's now muscle flexing for 2027 without really looking at what are the implications of continuing on this journey. Even if the Azimio team say that, hey, we are quitting the talks, and if we don't have our way, we are going to go for maandamano. Kenya Kwanza also, refusing to put all the cards on the table. What are the implications ultimately for Kenya? Right now, we've been discussing the finance bill.
Yes.
And so far, I think there's every single sector in this country that is talking about the implications of that bill should it pass. On the one side, we have the government, the Kenya Kwanza administration, and its allies insisting whether it will pass. Kenyans are saying if it passes, it is going to be dire. Now you want to put the mix of the political into this. It's already a powder keg. It is almost as though our politicians are determined to tear Kenya apart, just for their own selfish interests. And I think it is time for people to sober up. It's time for Kenyans to, we need to take our country back. If our politicians cannot cannot demonstrate the necessary leadership to advance their talks and come to some sort of agreement, you know, because every time our politicians disagree, they destabilize the country, okay? That's not fair, you know? This country belongs to all of us, and the future generations are depending on us to keep things going. So for me, I just think that the irresponsibility of our leadership generally across the board is something that cannot be tolerated anymore. And it's time for us to pay attention, to, you know, to step in and say, enough is enough.
But the reason being advanced is the fact that, you know, things will get better along the way.
Better
that
along which way?
We'll have to actually bear with, you know, the pain points right now, the choking points right now, but things will get better.
How?
Good example is the house levy, right? You cannot see the exceedingly beneficial effect of it right now, but afterwards you will see it.
That.
This is the reason that it's being advanced, I'm saying.
Let me tell you why that reason is so wrong. At one time, I sat down with the president now, when he was a deputy president. I told him that whether he takes power or Raila Odinga takes power, none of them, if they are not careful, will fix this economy, because Jubilee at that time and ruined the economy beyond repair. And now I can see it happening. Because you see what is in that finance bill, and I think it should pass. Because in my opinion,
it should pass.
It should pass. And I'll tell you why. These Kenyans need to suffer a little bit more.
Oh.
So that the pain becomes unbearable. Then they will be able to change their situation. Because you see, when you look at this finance bill, you just wonder who was writing it. Some proposals are ridiculous. Like, if someone, and the open doesn't happen, someone in the road hits your hand, you lose your hand. You go and get compensation because you are insured, like you have an insurance. That the compensation of yours from insurance, which is supposed to return you to the condition which you are before the accident, is attracting 16% tax. There is nothing more ridiculous than that. These are in due of 3% of, I don't know, housing levy.
Yes, exactly.
These fellows, instead of building as classrooms, which are not there, they imagine they can build as houses. So somebody is determined to mess up this economy completely. And that's why I'm saying that the only way now the Kenyans can rescue themselves is to pile more pain on them so that the pain is unbearable. Then they will wake up and say, no, please stop. We need to change this. Now I'll tell you where this mindset is come from. We have never had a people's government in Kenya. What we did, there was a colonial government whose mentality was exploitative. The idea was to exploit the Kenyans. Subsequent Kenyan government have always been exploitative. In just that this one now is going overboard. So this is the only difference. But otherwise, until we change the mentality and they see a government as a father and mother of the Kenyan people, as working for the Kenyans but not exploiting them, this thing will continue. And that's why I'm saying that, because this bill is so ridiculous that I think, and I think the president is helping the process, because he under Pinji, and I understand he will bring them to pass it. And I think they should. And now if I can advise Azimio, which I don't, they should go to parliament, oppose the bill for the record, vote against it for the record, but let these fellows pass this bill. This is a beautiful rope on which to hang them in 2027. Because this can only kill the economy.
So you think this bill is self-destructive for
it's
the
self-destructive.
For the Kenyan
it has
government?
To be self-destructive, because look at it this way. Just assume a very small company employing 5 people. You increase NSSF, you increase NHIF, you add the levy, you have increased the cost of doing that in business. So what are this business person do? As 5 employees, he must fire 3. And they'll be left with the 2 which he can manage. You understand? So it's going to increase unemployment. Remember, we are already having close to 20 million Kenyans actually out of work. I mean, people say 6 million, But when you look at it, it's not
The
60
rest is
million.
disguised employment.
Okay, yes. So now, when you have a finance bill like this proposal, which is undermining business, which will result in the capital flight because the people, you see, you don't want to work for the government. I know already a young fellow who has been manufacturing bags in Nakuru, and they sending these bags to California. The fellow got over 400,000 electricity bill, and they said, I can't work for the government, they must close. So businesses are going to take off. They have already been taking off because our energy cost has been very high. Now, add that, and the tax regime, and a reasonable tax regime to the energy bill, there will be massive loss of jobs. The productivity will go down. The government will collect the less taxes.
Tax, absolutely.
It's not going to increase tax collection because it can't. You see, the moment there is layoffs, it means the government is losing that revenue it was getting from those people. So this is, whoever is devising this in government, it's possible, by the way, you can go to the university and get a PhD and still learn nothing. Quite possible. Because I cannot understand how anyone can propose, for example, tax on insurance compensation. I don't understand how anyone can increase taxes when an economy is underperforming. Because the prescription, tested prescription, when an economy is underperforming, you reduce taxes to allow people to have more disposable income.
Thank you.
So that they can spur production by increasing consumption. Now what you are doing, you are actually restricting consumption.
Right. Let's hear from Dr. Green, because it seems you can be the voice of hope here. It is not all gloom and doom, is it? Because we don't want also to be just waking up in the morning and we are bombarding Kenyans on how we're in the dire straits. There's no ray of hope at the end of the tunnel.
Let me say this. First of all, it is true that our country is in a convoluted situation. This is a fact. It is true that the politicians shall be whipped to pass the finance bill as it is.
So that's a given. So despite the fact that we have proposals...
It may happen, but I mean, it's very clear that they are being whipped towards that direction.
And not even being whipped, looking at the numerical strength that is in Parliament right now.
And to the politician, it's like when you look at it and you understand the inner issues and how law works, you appreciate that they may have been handed over poisoned chalice because of some facts that may be there, and they need to be considered even as we do this. The question is, and I was just looking at the Constitution. Thanks for providing it here. I was looking at chapter 200, chapter 15, commissions and independent offices, where it goes to enumerate all those offices, the PSC, the Judicial Service, and Teacher Service Commission, and all that. And then 250, you see, let me try and see where I saw this. Number 7, the remuneration and benefits payable to or in respect of a commissioner or the holder of an independent office shall be a charge of the consolidated fund. Benefits payable to, number 8, I think it's number 8 I wanted to read. The remuneration and benefits payable to or in respect of a commissioner or the holder of independent office shall not be varied to the disadvantage of the commissioner or holder of an independent office. You cannot touch their salary without their consent. And the same is with the judges and all these kind of leaders that we are talking about. So you may find that in very good faith, with every good intention, this has been passed.
At 5%.
Whatever it is that is going to be passed. And then people go to court. What happens? the whole thing is stopped. Hasn't it been stopped before? The judiciary, the executive, and the legislature don't operate in a silo. They are all independent, and they are supposed to check each other. Haven't we seen before the salaries of judges? I think they were taxed at one time, and they had to be taken back so that the equivalent of what was taxed was reverted to, so that it is like an additional salary for the same. So this is a situation, a reality that we all need to look at and appreciate, that there may be challenges coming forward. Of course, the reality in some of these cases comes out to say that we will deal with that when we get there. But haven't we been there? Is it not good time for us to start thinking about it before it happens, because it shall happen? Have we had proper and efficient public participation in this process? Because I think I keep looking at actions that are being taken, and I refer to the Constitution. I also look at the manifesto that the government produced, and most of them are aligned to the manifesto. But the reality is, what is the communication that we are giving to the people? Kenyans seem not to know what is happening. And this is the biggest challenge that the government is, with good intention that may be extremely good, aligned to the great manifesto, the plan that is there. But there is poor communication. Let's face the facts. People are not understanding what is expected of them. They don't know this deduction. What do I do? What is my priority today? Is not a house. It's something else, maybe health. Maybe they feel the education system is failing and I want to do something else. I want to take my child to a private school. But if there was proper consultation to just inform, to communicate in a manner that works, you should not strain. Like I saw my very good friend, the PS, for
Ministry of Housing.
Ministry of Housing, a great guy, a magical mind, with everything else. He shouldn't strain. He shouldn't be having his handkerchief all over and drinking water all over, explaining the simplest of what should have been. Because
but it was a sweltering day, you must give it to him as well.
Yeah.
The sun was really out.
Yeah, it was hot. And I mean, what I say, we should not be straining to explain what is good for the people. And that is not his effort to be done. It is a different institution. It is a consortium. It's a teamwork that is going to lead people to understand what is being told about this process. And the secret is in effective or efficient public participation, because at the lack of that, then, as I said, is a poisoned chalice, and it's going to be a problem that is going to lead to the whole thing not taking off in one way or another.
Kalua, though, there is one thing he said when he talking about this office is independent. I think we need to accept one thing: the parliament is not working the way it was designed to work. Okay, the parliament is supposed to be our protector, because we can always expect executive overreach, but then the parliament is supposed to check that. So I think the institution which I think right now is probably maintaining some degree of independence is the judiciary. But parliament, we don't have a protector there. They will do whatever the executive want, which is unfortunate, because you can see in the US, which how we mirror ours, parliament takes its position on certain issues. We expected this government to run a very lean administration because of the economic situation. It's huge. They didn't do that. We expected it to address the question of energy. That is not even in their plan. So Kalua said there is a plan. I don't believe KK has any plan for the economy. Because if you don't deal with energy, don't deal with the size of the government in order to reduce consumption, then you don't have a plan that can revive the economy. So I think we'll move like this until we go to the next election. And next election, hopefully the Kenyans will have woken up.
Okay, let's hear from Daisy, because is the president also reading properly from his tea leaves? The sentiments of the country, the emotion of the country right now. Should this bill steamroll through Parliament and, of course, see the light of day, what then for us?
Well, the president reads the Bible, according to him, not tea leaves. But whatever the case, definitely, I think right now, of course, I know that. The president is deaf to the cries of Kenyans, clearly, 100%, because he's determined to steamroll this. However, I think it's also indicative of where we are at as a country, in that because of the dire economic situation that we are in, the government is scrambling and trying to find money around every corner, you know? And so the question here is, why aren't they bold enough to actually say this is where we are at and there are certain measures that we need to take to get us out of it, okay? But let me pick up on something that Professor has said here about Parliament, because the situation that we are in is because of Parliament, because we have had a Parliament that has not been a representative of the people and has not been a diligent custodian of the public purse. This is not a sudden crisis. There is nobody who did not know that Kenya was already in an economic mess, because the IMF program began even before this administration came in. It came in at the time of President Uhuru Kenyatta, and to show up, to ensure that Kenya continues to meet its international and local obligations, okay? And this is because the same people that we see right now pushing, because, you know, Parliament didn't change that much in terms of many of the key figures, you know, in the House. Parliament, for 10 years, under the Jubilee administration of Uhuru Kenyatta, allowed the government to run massive deficits, right, within their budgets, overspend, and spend carelessly. Borrow expensive loans, short-term loans. And so everyone knew the chickens were coming home to roost, and this is now the consequence of the irresponsibility of Parliament. So whatever our government is telling us right now, that this is good for us, the bulk of the resources that they are trying to raise is actually going towards debt repayment. It's not even towards development, it's not towards service delivery, it's towards debt repayment. So we need to have a conversation about how to bring our country back from the brink of the brink of economic collapse, as it were, because that's literally what we are facing. Because you know, aside from the irresponsibility, or the financial and economic irresponsibility that was demonstrated by the previous administration, we've also had global shocks that have contributed significantly to the economic situation that we're in. So, proper leadership would actually call the nation to order, because this is not even about promises right now. Right now, it is about how do we stabilize Kenya, okay? And I think it is very selfish for the president to continue with some of his promises in terms of the commitments that he made to his allies by giving us a burdensome, a bloated government. Because, you know, first and foremost, we know even with the CASs, that was already an anomaly under Uhuru Kenyatta's administration. Remember that even when Kenyans, by the time we were promulgating the 2010 constitution, Kenya had a government of nearly 100 ministers. Remember, the coalition government, I think they were 98 or 99 ministers and assistant ministers. And Kenyans were very clear, they did not want a bloated executive. That is why the constitution is deliberately prescriptive, even for numbers. Says you will have a minimum of 14, a maximum of 22. And then they go and they craft, you know, through, you know, sleight of hand, supported by the PSC, to bring up these. At a time like this, when the president is calling on Kenyans to tighten their belts, and we are seeing the government living its best life yet, you know, padding parastatals when, you know, traveling with huge entourages, you know. So they're telling people to tighten their belts while they continue to live very expensively. And so this is the time, a leader, you know, because I think the crisis that we have in Kenya is a lack of proper leadership, you know. But this is the time for President Ruto to even call the country and say, listen, we inherited a total mess. And so there are certain things that we have to do to get Kenya to where it needs to be. There are certain promises we cannot keep. Even to his allies, look, guys, I know I promised you guys jobs, but the way things are, we can't do this now. Right now, what we need to do is just save Kenya from collapse. Right now, that should be the business of every one of us. Because despite the fact that Parliament has really gotten us into this mess, and it is Parliament, with the support of the executive overreach, but rather facilitating executive overreach, got us to this mess. It is now for all hands on deck, all of us Kenyans, to come together and say, this is our country. If Kenya goes bad, the way Professor here is saying that we should now pass the bill and let the collapse begin, it's going to be bad for all of us. It's not going to be bad for Kenya Kwanza and for... It is all of us. We are all going to suffer. And because we are all going to suffer, we all need to come together to look for a way to salvage the situation. And we have examples that we can borrow from. Kenya is not the only country that is struggling this way. There are so many countries around the world. We don't need to go the Sri Lanka way. Right now, that's what it looks like, that we are actually going the Sri Lanka way. We've seen what is happening in Ghana. I mean, the examples, the world is replete with examples, but we also have examples of countries that actually stemmed the fall. So it is incumbent upon President Ruto now, because he is the president and ultimately the buck stops with him. Kenya collapses under his watch. History will judge him. It's not going to judge us. So it is incumbent upon him to call the nation to a conversation. We need to have a national conversation. Even as we've been listening to the submissions on the finance bill, there is no, have you heard any single sector supporting it?
Supporting it.
Have you heard any single sector? Not the teachers, not the manufacturers, not the health workers, not civil society, not the economists. They are like, this will destroy Kenya. This will wipe out businesses. This will cause untold misery to Kenyans.
Thank you.
And maybe there are some good ideas, you know, but a good idea at a bad time is a bad idea, you know. So
thank you. Thank you. No, just a moment, Professor. I just need to take a station break right now. We're due for a station break. It's 7 o'clock on the nose. But when we circle back, of course, we look at that, and you're raising the question of leadership. And I think this is a good spawning ground for President Ruto as well, to prove his leadership mettle. In times of crisis is where we see the good attributes of a leader really coming to the fore. If at all things are all that dire, as we're putting it, for him to come and prove that my hands are